like jump over a hurdle when he's a little kid. And I kind of feel like if you had, and I mean, this is all physical education though, but I feel like if you're playing soccer, you get the swing leg element of the takeoff, but that's slow on its own. You got basketball, which is good for just jumping, but it's like, well, if you want to also just learn to make things a little faster, just doing stuff like having kids just jump over hurdles and having fun, or I guess just having kids doing track and like long jump too is great too. I wish I would have done that when I was a kid, you know? And so I think it's just cool to look at like some of the pieces that come from each sport that can ultimately go into building an athlete who has a lot of options later on.
Yeah. And I think there's always people get scared of that individualization of sport, saying, oh, you wouldn't want to step, like, no, your primary sport wouldn't be track and field. But it could be, like you say, it could be clearing barriers. It could be jumping as far as you can. It doesn't have to be the event. You don't have to go and learn all the intricate skills, but just exposing your body to needing to get off the ground faster and being that dynamic and reactive in a sense has a huge value. So if you're sprinting, you're throwing implements and you're jumping over things or jumping as far as you can, I think that matched with, like you say, soccer and basketball, you're going to have someone that's going to get some success in either one of those directions, I think. So yeah, there's a lot of value, especially if you want to learn to jump high, in having to get over something, the need, and that to traject your body more with a longer parabola as well, as opposed to kind of stopping on a dime and going straight up with a dunk. I think that's the inherent difference with the ground contact times in dunking a basketball, is that you really have to just stop and go straight upwards. So you're going to get a longer ground contact time for doing that. That might not transfer over well for trying to get the whole of your body over something. So that's why doing a little bit of that as well, I think marrying those two up has great merit.
Yeah, I think that's a good segue into actually, so the official kind of integrating question of track and non-track athletes. So what are some things that you look at with working or prescribing or looking at plyometrics in light of team sport athletes who maybe when they go, like a basketball player, if they go to jump, maybe they spend a little longer time on the ground than a high jumper might, or volleyball or any jumping sport. What are some nuances that you're looking at when you look at a team sport athlete compared to a track and field athlete?
Well, I mean, the degree of multi-directional work, I think, really multiplies in a sense. And you inherently can be spending a lot more time redirecting force, whether it's moving side to side, whether it's forwards into a backwards motion. It's learning to apply brakes and then accelerate back out of those movements. And I will include a lot of that. And one of my favorite combos is 2 forward and 1 back. And whether you're doing that bilaterally, whether you're doing that on one leg, I think the pinnacle of real dynamic movements is 2 hops forward, 1 hop back, or 2 hops forward, 1 hop upwards. So like a fast into a high hop. The speed of that, learning how to control your center of mass when you're doing those sort of movements, putting the brakes on, redirecting force, and really just being able to change your momentum effectively and not getting stuck in the bottom of movements. Because I think that really is where you make your money in team sports. When you're trying to cut, those guys that sit at the bottom of that cut and the defender's reading it really easily, like, okay, I know exactly where you're going with this. You're not selling it at all, in comparison to the ones that just drop in and out of that movement really effectively. I think a lot of my plyos and work for especially things like basketball, that's where a lot of my work will go. So the multi-directional sense is massive there. If you're looking at more soccer players or guys in American football that are running longer routes and stuff, I like to just get a lot more unilateral work on the move with those guys. And people might say, oh, but they do a lot of that in sport. And I'm like, exactly. So I want them to continually, I want you to be able to bound on a curve without using your arms. Can you zigzag using a set of hops on one leg? Taking away certain things, doing that with a med ball. Can you do this? Can you continually propel yourself effectively in a way that it's not massively stressful on your body, so that when you get back to the pitch, this is just something that you can do easily. It's not really taxing on you. And I think having an array of skills in that sense for higher speed games like football, soccer, I think is really, really preferable. And I think people as well, they get very scared of implementing too much submaximal work for team sport athletes. And And I argue all the time in saying to them, are you truly watching what's happening on the court? Because you watch a basketball player move on the court, often a lot of the time, especially the bigger the guy, they spend so much time on the ground just plodding around. They are being as efficient as they possibly can because they might be playing for 40 minutes. So the quality of those, say, extensive or submaximal contacts can be pretty poor, and they could all be pretty long on the ground. I would argue that they probably sit more towards maybe 0.3 and 0.4 of a second in terms of just, it's not that quick. Maybe a little bit quicker, you could say, but I want to say, let's pull them into faster on the ground movements, but with maybe a little bit less displacement, and working your ability to handle those movements at a bit more speed, so that you can call upon that. You can call upon that reactive sense. You can't just go, here's the game. You're getting exposed to a lot of these movements, and it's going to make you better, because obviously it's not. And you then essentially go straight to the intense work as well. And I'm like, well, you're not doing any of the extensive work, although you think you might be. So that's where I really attack, especially for basketball players. I think lighter, extensive work is hugely important for players when it comes to ankle rolls. They have a history of spraining ankles. I found that relearning how to land effectively has been a very, very important metric for me in terms of re-rolling the ankle. So yeah, that's a very broad answer that I've given you, but hopefully it gives you a bit of a gist as to, where we can go with the conversation on that.
Yeah.